Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Dyllon Explains Everything. My name's Dylan. In case you couldn't tell by the title, I'm the one explaining everything. Now I know that I said in this episode we would read another story, but I don't have a story to read, so we're just kind of skipping ahead. And I know that I said if I didn't have a story to read, I'd talk about Phineas and Ferb, but we're not doing that. We'll do that next time probably, if you want that. But for now, in this episode, we're going to be talking about Dyllon Explains Everything, and what exactly this channel is, and why it started, and where it started, and how it started, and all sorts of things. So, just stay tuned for that if you're interested. But first off, I'd like to start out with our word of the day, and our word of the day today is antecedent. Antecedent, A-N-T-E-C-E-D-E-N-T, antecedent. The antecedent is, put simply, the word that a pronoun is replacing. So if I'm saying, Jeff's pretty cool, he plays good games, then Jeff is the antecedent because Jeff is what he is replacing. Or when I say he, I'm replacing Jeff. Therefore, the antecedent is Jeff. Alright, and now into the main content of the video. So what we're going to be talking about is Dyllon Explains Everything, and where it started and all that stuff. So I'm just going to start out with where it started. The idea for Dyllon Explains Everything was basically entirely based on the TV show Adam Ruins Everything. Basically, at my middle school, we had a broadcast class that would play a broadcast for the school every Friday. And on those days, everyone in the class would be able to have a turn where they would be able to do broadcasts. So there were 4 or 5 different groups, and we would rotate through, and our job during the off time was to work on some activities and assignments and stuff, but also to work on the broadcast. And quite early on, me and my group members decided to do this kind of Adam Ruins Everything knockoff because we all liked the show. I believe it was our second broadcast, and we got to do 5 over the course of the semester, and me and one of my friends that he was in the group, we kind of messed with the system a little and got to do broadcast for 2 semesters, even though it was a 1-semester class. But we were just really popular. Dyllon Explains Everything immediately kind of blew up as the most popular kind of thing that broadcast did, and it was really kind of cool to see how many people really liked it. People were talking about it outside of just when I brought it up to them. And I thought that was really cool. And we would go through, our first one was on All Saints Day. And so we went through what is All Saints Day? It's kind of a holiday that most people haven't heard of and stuff. So we went through how it started, how it's celebrated, blah, blah, blah. And it was originally going to be kind of this spoof about different holidays that we did every broadcast, but it ended up just being a thing where we could explain things. And we would walk around our school, and it was just this whole thing. And we eventually started doing a storyline with it, right? So there was this character named Bob that was from a PSA we did early on in our broadcasts before Dyllon Explains Everything even started, and then we tied that in, and we had prequel broadcasts, and we always had a live segment of the broadcast where 2 people got to kind of be the hosts for the broadcast. And what we did was we pre-recorded that live host part because for whatever reason we couldn't do it live. And we abused this power in order to use a green screen to clone me, and then we had my clones take over as host. I think I was a bit egotistical at the time because I just kind of took over the show, but it was a really good time, and everyone seemed to like it, and we had this whole mapped out plan of the story and what was going to happen, and then COVID hit. And the entire show got canceled because we weren't really doing broadcast. And the only broadcasts that were still going on were from people's homes. And we just did not want Dyllon Explains Everything to be done at a home and be really weird and be in someone's house or their basement. That'd just be awkward to see one dude in his basement in front of a whiteboard explaining things to you. So after a bit, I decided to do the show on my own in my basement in front of a whiteboard and explain things to a camera. And it worked out pretty well at first. A lot of people started watching it, and it was going fairly steady. It had its ups and downs. What I found was the whiteboard was somewhat useless. I was running out of things to really write on the whiteboard other than like timelines, which just took forever, and I have a feeling very few people actually read them. They weren't a very useful visual, and it just wasn't a great time. So what I decided to do was stop doing Dyllon Explains Everything. Basically, the kind of like viewers that I had kind of dwindled, and I started like lacking motivation seriously to pursue it. And the amount of time it took me to do one episode was about 3 hours, which is not terrible, but not great, and definitely not efficient. And I could not devote that time to it. Like, I physically could. It was just mentally exhausting, and to have very few people actually like watching, and the people who did watch would often just tell me that like they didn't know what was going on, and that just kind of discouraged me from doing it. So I took a break for a week, and then the week turned into like a 3-month break, and that 3-month break turned into quite a while. I believe it was about 1.5 years that I was not doing Dyllon Explains Everything, and I was done with it. I had, when I stopped, very few people noticed, which is kind of funny. Over time, people definitely start bringing it up, like, hey, you should bring that back. Hey, I missed those. Hey, where'd that go? Are you still doing that? But it was just too much, and whenever people would ask me about it, which at first, like I said, was very few people, and it took about 1 year before people were really asking me, like, sometimes it was multiple times a week that I'd get asked, hey, when are you bringing that back? And that's when I finally kind of thought, maybe I should bring it back. And so a little while ago, I had decided I wanted to bring it back, but I was trying to think of what to do differently so I wouldn't run into the same problems. The number one thing was the amount of time it took me was ridiculous, and I wanted to shorten that down. Video editing is a nightmare, especially when, like, I didn't want to put money into this thing I did put money into it, but, like, I didn't want to pay a bunch of money for, like, a really good editing software for this thing that, like, wasn't actually going very well. And so I ended up having to use free software for my videos, and it was just a huge pain. Well, I decided I'm not going to do videos. Videos take up it takes triple the amount of time to do a video, and you have to put up with really bad editing software or pay a bunch of money. So I decided I was not going to do that, and I decided it was going to be a podcast. And luckily, my dad had read an audiobook for one of his friends who wrote a book, and he had podcast equipment from that was gifted to him for the podcast, and he's just been hanging on to it, and he was like, I'm sure this will come in handy one day. So I asked him if I could use that, and that's what I've been using to record this. Audacity is a great free online software for recording audio, so I've just been using that to do audio stuff, and audio is a lot easier to edit because you can edit it on the fly, and you don't have to do an hour of recording, an hour of deleting the takes that were bad and whatever. I can just go, and if something's crap, I can just delete it. And it's just so much better that way, and I don't have to worry about visuals, because frankly, a lot of times when I'm talking about things, there's not a lot of good visuals to use, and I could do like some cool visual stuff. The problem is just like having that relate to what I'm talking about to the point where people won't get distracted from what I'm talking about. For educational videos, unless you're just showing pictures of what you're talking about, it doesn't normally go great, and it takes a lot of time to not add a ton of quality. So I decided to stick to podcasting, and I was kind of on the fence about it, right? I had all this equipment set up for it, or available for it, and I was considering whether I should do it or not. And when I was kind of finally like on the edge where I was about to like start doing it, I went to school, and it got brought up 3 times at school. The first time someone had asked me when I'm going to bring it back, and I mentioned doing a podcast, and they kind of said that like they would totally listen to it. And then a little while later, it got brought up again, and my teacher actually mentioned how, like, it was actually, I think it was unrelated to Dyllon Explains Everything, that they had just mentioned podcasts, and I mentioned how I thought podcasts were kind of dying out, and that's why I didn't want to do Dyllon Explains Everything, and they mentioned how podcasts are kind of coming back and making a big kind of return, especially with younger people, and I kind of saw that as like almost like a sign. And then I had brought it up to another teacher, and they gave me some good software and stuff for putting it on Spotify and that kind of thing. So I was like, you know what, we're gonna start it. So this thing that was originally just a school project has since evolved from YouTube videos to a podcast on Spotify and YouTube. And in evaluating how the channel is actually done, I definitely think it was like tapering off for a while, and I think that scared me and demotivated me to stopping the videos. And I think now I'm getting to the point where I'm wondering if that's happening again, but I'm also realizing that there's a steady stream of you guys listening to this, and people are talking to me about it. And it's more than just, hey, that's cool that you're like doing a thing. It's more actually talking about what I'm talking about. And that's really what I want to encourage. Like, when we had originally started this off as a school project, it wasn't just a school project to us. It wasn't just an opportunity to try out camera techniques. It wasn't just an opportunity to talk for a while. It was an opportunity to tell people about things that they really didn't even know they wanted to hear about. And that's what I wanted to do with this channel. Talk about the things that no one realizes fully that they want to hear about, and make it interesting in a way that they do. And I haven't been amazing at it, I don't think, but I definitely think I've given it a shot, and I think it's been going really well. And I hope that you guys would agree in that. And so that's when we reach the present, where I make this video and explain my entire channel. We've had our ups. I think my first episode ever on the channel still remains the most popular, which was Dyllon Explains Pythagoras and the Pythagoreans. And that episode was definitely one of my favorite to make as well. But also the Crocs episode, the pizza episode, the KFC episodes, these ones that are kind of like about cultural like topics and things that are relevant modern day, they tend to be the ones that do the best. And this has made me think recently about shifting my model. As I talked about extensively in my update episode, I want to switch to a more scriptless format, and I want to switch to a more free-form kind of extensive format where I go on about a topic for a while and evaluate different aspects of it, but still provide in an interesting way. And I've been thinking a really good way to do that is to take something modern, take something current, explain that, and then connect it to something in the past. I've been thinking about it from a kind of past-oriented perspective, and if you look at my videos, that's exactly what happens. I'll bring up a topic from the past, right? The Pythagoreans, Euler, different math concepts. In cases of math videos, it's less about the past and more about just the concepts themselves. And I'll bring them up, and I'll try to present at some point within the video an analogy to something that's relevant to people. And that's when it makes the most sense for them. And I think that the problem was, you can see that all this time I've been focusing so much on the past part. Here's the Pythagoreans. It's similar to this, but it's the Pythagoreans, and I'm going to tell you about the Pythagoreans. And I don't think it's as much people don't care, or that they don't know they don't care, as much as just people want to hear about things that they see as relevant to them. And I'm no different. I want to listen to things that I agree with, or that are relevant for me, or are interesting in some way. And hearing some dude rant about something from 100 years ago isn't going to be interesting necessarily. It may be, but it might not be. But hearing them talk about something that I'm living through, some aspect of life that I haven't thought about before, haven't analyzed deeply, or thinking about something in a different way, or whatever, that is where things get really interesting for everyone. Everyone I've talked to has said that is kind of the way to go. You don't want to just explain something. You've got to actually connect it. And I think that's where Dyllon Explains Everything has failed. It just explains everything. There's nothing about connects to everything. There's nothing about analyzes everything. There's nothing about, oh, Dylan tells you how everything associates to your life. There's nothing like that. In the end, it still explains everything. And I think that might need to change. I'm not going to go through changing the title, but I am going to change the model. Because in the end, this channel should be dynamic. It should be changing. It should be allowed to change. And I think that it wants to change in a way. And so I think I will. And from now on, I'm going to kind of focus more on this kind of free form. Sometimes, once in a while, do like an hour-long episode or whatever, like an epic. But also focus less on the topic side and more on the connection side. More on the analysis without calling it an analysis, Focusing more on something relevant to our lives and how it connects to it. And I think that is where Dyllon Explains Everything is going to head. So, with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode, this brief kind of look at the past, present, and future of Dyllon Explains Everything. I know that this is shortly after an episode all about updates and stuff, and it kind of feels like I'm just talking more about what I'm going to do with the channel rather than doing it. But I promise now that I'm back, things are going to change. And hopefully it'll be for the better, and I hope you all enjoy it. And with all that being said, my name's Dylan, and I explain everything.